I am with you always until the end of the world.
You may have heard the true story of the twin girls, Kiri and Brielle Jackson. Kiri and Brielle, they were born almost 12 weeks premature. They were so weak, so frail, each one of them only weighing a mere 2 pounds. And so the doctor, he placed them into separate incubators, and he was observing their growth, their development every single day. Now, Kiri, one of the twin girls, she began to show steady signs of development. She put on weight, she grew, she began to move around. Clearly, she was doing well. Brielle, on the other hand, she would cry and cry incessantly from morning till night, leaving her face blue, gasping for air. The nurse who was attending to the two girls, she couldn't bear the agony of Brielle. So one day, defying all hospital rules and regulations, she placed both the girls together in one incubator. And then you know what happened? Kiri, the healthier of the two, she very lovingly threw her skinny little arm around her little sister in what seemed like an encouraging embrace. Something like this. And then, almost immediately, Brielle stopped her crying. Over the days, Brielle's heart rate began to stabilize. Her cheeks, they grew pink. She began to put on weight. And very soon, one day, both the sisters were healthy enough to return home. Praise the Lord. A true story this is. A story that shows the positive impact that encouragement has in lives. Just as the word suggests, encouragement. It is the giving of courage, the giving of hope, confidence, comfort to someone. Just like over here, little Kiri, she gave courage, comfort, confidence to her little sister. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 11. It instructs each and every one of us. It says, "Therefore, encourage one another, build each other up, just as in fact you are already doing. You know, my friends, this world is full of discouragers. I'm sure you'll agree with me. We find them by the dozen at our workplace. We find them in our friend circle. And very sadly, we also have them in our families. In his book that he has named Passionate People, Keith Miller, he categorizes people into two main groups. There are the basement people, and there are the balcony people. Now, the basement people are all the discouragers that we have in our life. And they sound something like this. That's too difficult. Surely you can do that. Or, that is the silliest thing that you could ever do. Or I think the worst of it all is, nothing good could ever come out of you. They crush our spirit. They break our hearts. They constantly point out what is wrong rather than what is right. In a nutshell, basement people are people who cause a room to light up when they're gone. By contrast, balcony people are people who are full of cheer. And they cheer us along the way. They say, hey, you can do it. We believe in you, honey. They make our heart, our spirit, bloom like a beautiful flower with their words of encouragement. What are you? Basement or balcony people? My daughter, Sammy, she has a great passion for music and song. And she was 5 years old when she said to me, one day I am going to sing and play for Jesus. And I was so excited about her vision for life. I immediately got her enrolled for piano classes. And Sammy, in all her childish enthusiasm to prove to her mommy her piano playing skills, she would invariably play all her pieces at top-notch speed. You know, not paying attention to detail, not paying attention to the timing of the beat. And I used to be so mean. I would sit there and I would very carefully jot down all her mistakes. And then I would sarcastically say to her, and you want to play for the Lord? That was a terrible thing to do. And one day, Jesus corrected me. He said, don't you go discouraging my little girl again. And the very next day, I made a complete change in my attitude. No longer would I nitpick. Instead, I began to think of means and ways of how to encourage Sammy. We would sit together, sing together, play together, laugh at all our mistakes together. And I even nicknamed her. I'd say to her, hey you, singing prophetess of the Lord. And I'd see her cheeks, her eyes just glow with this inner joy, this inner confidence that comes from encouragement. Today, Sammy is 12, and by God's blessings and encouragement, she indeed is singing and playing for the Lord. One of the highest of Christian duties is the duty of encouragement. Let me repeat that. One of the highest of Christian duties is the duty of encouragement. Many a times, just a simple word of praise, of appreciation, a word of encouragement has kept a Christian on his feet, and it has helped him persevere through this crazy, crazy life. Tonight we'll study the life of Barnabas from the New Testament and how he was a source of encouragement to the early church. The very name, Barnabas, it means son of encouragement. We will look at 3 events in the life of Barnabas, and I think that should give us a fair idea of what it means to be an encourager. 1. Barnabas encouraged the church by his faith. Acts chapter 9, it tells us the story of Saul. We all know Saul used to mercilessly kill the Christians, left, right, and center. One day, Saul was on his way to Damascus because he wanted to persecute some more Christians out there. And along the road, Saul encountered Jesus Christ. He was converted. And immediately thereafter, he began to preach Jesus fearlessly to the people of Damascus. Now, Saul's conversion, it put him in a very difficult situation. A difficult situation of non-acceptance. The Jews would not accept Saul because he was preaching Jesus. And neither did the apostles accept Saul because they were so petrified about his past involvement with Christian persecution. Can you imagine what Saul must have gone through? The rejection, the discouragement that he felt, not being accepted, neither here nor there. You know, there are many recently saved people who go right back to living a life without Jesus Christ. You know why? It's because their new life, it automatically requires that their old friendships should close, discontinue. And at the same time, this newly found Christian family, it does not give them the support and the encouragement that they need. And so, very sadly, they slip right back into their old ways. A life without Jesus Christ. Saul also could have slipped into his old ways of life had it not been for Barnabas. Barnabas showed faith in Saul. Barnabas encouraged Saul. He took Saul to the apostles, and he very clearly explained to the apostles everything that had happened. How Saul encountered Jesus, how he was converted, and thereafter how he fearlessly preached Jesus in Damascus. Thereafter, the apostles accepted Saul on the merit of Barnabas' word. Barnabas' encouragement played a very important role in molding Saul into the Paul that we all know. Let me tell you another story. Howard Hendricks. Hendricks is a very distinguished professor in Christian education. He tells us the story of his childhood. He came from a broken family. And he was the number one notorious problem kid in school. He tells us when he was in the 5th grade, on the very first day of his school, his teacher took him aside and said, "Are you Hendrix? I've heard so much about you. You're the worst kid in the school, aren't you?" Well, that year, Hendrix did whatever he could to prove his teacher right. He was indeed the worst kid in the school. The next year, in 6th grade, on the very first day, his 6th grade teacher, she took him aside and said, "Are you Hendrix? I've heard so much about you. It seems you're the worst kid in the school." And Hendrix thought, "Oh no, here we go again." And the teacher continued, "But you know something, Hendrix? I'm not going to believe a word they have said about you." That was the turning point in Hendrix's life. Hendrix attributes his conversion to all the help and to all the loving encouragement that this beautiful teacher gave him. Praise the Lord. There's a beautiful saying that's very close to my heart. It goes like this. It says, if you treat people as they are, then they'll remain as they are. But if you treat them as they ought to be, they become bigger and better people. Think about it. So many of you out there, y'all must be leaders holding positions of power and responsibility in organizations. How do you treat your subordinates? Do you show faith in them? Do you encourage them to reach their full potential? Parents, how do you treat your children? Do you encourage them? Think about it. Second, Barnabas encouraged the church by his compassion. Alan Emery, a very well-known minister, Christian minister, he tells us of an incident that happened in his younger days, an incident that left a very positive, deep impact in his mind. It seems one day his dad received a very frantic phone call saying that a very well-known Christian man was found drunk, unconscious, somewhere along the sidewalk. And Alan tells us he was absolutely amazed at how his father began to make elaborate arrangements for a chauffeur-driven limousine to pick up this drunken man. And Alan was even more shocked when his mother, she began to decorate the best guest room in the house. She spread this beautiful, expensive bed sheet on an equally expensive antique bed. And Alan protested. He said, "Mom, he's drunk. For all you know, he'll get sick and he'll destroy this beautiful piece of furniture." "I know," said Mom, "but this man has fallen. And when he comes around, he'll feel so ashamed of himself. He will need all the loving encouragement that we can give him." Think about it. What a sensitive, compassionate way of picking up someone who has fallen. And we all fall down, don't we? Sometime or the other, we all fall down. What do we do then? Do we condemn? Do we judge? Don't. We need to pick each other up in loving, compassionate encouragement. Barnabas, he exhibited this compassionate encouragement in Acts chapter 13. There was this young man named John Mark. And Mark was so enthusiastic to work for the Lord. He was bubbling with energy to work for God. So he joined Paul and Barnabas on their very first missionary journey. However, somewhere along the way, Mark seemed to have changed his mind, and he quit ministry efforts, and he returned home. And I think Paul was really upset about this. Later on, in Acts chapter 15, Paul and Barnabas, they decide once again to undertake another missionary journey. And this time, Barnabas decides to invite Mark over. But Paul, he vehemently refuses to take Mark. Why? Because Mark had let them down before. How can you place your reliance on a quitter? And therefore, Paul and Barnabas went separate ways. Paul took with him Silas, and Barnabas did take Mark. Now, I want for all of us to just step into the shoes of Mark for a while. How do you think Mark felt? The rejection, the discouragement that he felt when he came to know that Paul did not want to take him on a missionary journey. Maybe he felt so discouraged, he wanted to completely quit on his ministry efforts. And then you know what? We would never have had the Gospel of Mark had it not been for Barnabas. Despite his past failure, Barnabas gave Mark a second chance. He encouraged Mark to pursue his ministry efforts, and that completely changed the course of Mark's life. How about us? Do we judge people, evaluate people in the light of their past failures? Are we willing to give people a second chance? Do we lend people a loving, compassionate, encouraging hand to lift them up? Do we build them up? Third, Barnabas encouraged the church with his giving. Acts in chapter 4, it tells us that Barnabas sold his land, and he gave the entire financial proceeds to the apostles so that they could continue with their works for the Lord. An encourager, he understands that he simply is a steward for God. That all that he has, his finances, his prosperity, talents, gifts, time, they are not his own. They have been given to him by God. And they have been given to him so that he can use them to encourage the people around him with his giving, meeting their needs. My parents now have retired, and they left the hustle and the bustle of the city life, and they have settled in this very quiet, remote place in Bombay. It's called Belavli Village. And I remember a few years ago when I went to meet them, the church was in a very dilapidated building. The roof was leaking. The tiles were broken. There were no confessionals, no baptismal font. There were no benches for the people to sit. And the parish priests and the parishioners, they wanted so much for a beautiful church where they could come and worship God. But they were all very discouraged because they knew that all this would require a lot of finance. And they were all kind of lower middle class. But then one day, this rich Indian man returned from Africa. He had worked there for a very long time. He had earned a good amount of money. And he had come to visit his aunt here in Bellavely. When he came to know of the father's need, the priest's need, he gave generously. And today, there's a beautiful church, properly equipped, everything, benches, confessionals, baptismal font, catechism classes, everything. And just in the nick of time, when the number of parishioners have almost doubled, this man, by his giving, he was a source of encouragement, not only to the priest, but also to all the parishioners. And my dear friends, encouragement need not necessarily be in the form of financial giving. It can simply be in the form of you giving your time, your love, your concern, an encouraging hug, just like little Kiri gave to her sister. I'd like to close now with a video. It's a musical, a beautiful video, very short but very deep. So pay rapt attention and enjoy yourself.
Where's Tommy?
I thought he was with you.
No.
Jack.
Tommy?
Go get him.
Don't stop. Keep playing. Here we go. Here's the fun part.
Did you do this?
Great job.
Encouragement. Pass it on.